Now, if we should look at it deeply, you will discover that the best Super Eagles team that Nigeria have had for the last 20 years thereabout, it was the team they had under the former Super Eagles coach, late Stephen Keshi. Because if you look at that Nigeria team under Stephen Keshi, you will discover that Stephen Keshi, as the head coach of the Super Eagles team as at the year 2013, he took them to the African Cup of Nations that was held by South Africa. And that tournament, Nigeria played that tournament with unbeaten, and they made it to the final and defeated Burkina Faso in the final 1-0 without losing a single game. That tournament, they won the tournament with unbeaten. Now, if you look at it, you will discover that that same winning form, that same winning energy was what Steve Keshi's Super Eagles team took to the Confederations Cup that was held by Brazil. Because in case you don't know, there was a tournament normally called Confederations Cup that is normally organized by the hosting nation of the World Cup, and as at that time it was Brazil that was hosting the World Cup. So that was why Brazil hosted the Confederations Cup. And you will discover that in Nigeria's opening game of that competition, they trashed a team like Haiti 6-0. And you will discover that the teams, or the national teams that are participating in that Confederations Cup, are normally the champions in every continent. And as at then, Nigeria were the champions in Africa because they won the Nations Cup in the year 2013. So looking at it backward, you will discover that the same winning form, the same unbeaten run that Steve Keshi had with the African Cup of Nations, with Super Eagles, that was what he took to the Confederations Cup. And the opening game, they trashed Haiti 6-0. And going to the World Cup now, 2014, you will discover that Steve Keshi's Super Eagles team, they played very well. Because if you look at Nigeria's game versus Argentina in that 2014 World Cup in the group stage, you will discover that it was not easy on the side of Argentina. It was like an enigma battle between Lionel Messi of Argentina and Ahmed Musa of Nigeria. If you can flip back very well, if you can wind back, you will discover that Super Eagles team in the year 2014, that World Cup, they were a big threat to Argentina in that game. Even Lionel Messi, in his post-match press conference, he testified to it that Nigeria are the giants of Africa, that the game was like a big bone on their throat. So you will discover that Steve Keshi's team is one of the best teams Nigeria had in the last 20 years. Steve Keshi's team, in the tournament they played, I'm not talking about the friendly games, I'm just talking about major competition. Steve Keshi had a long unbeaten run in a major competition. Not until they came up against Uruguay and they were defeated 2-1 in the Confederations Cup. So you discover it was Uruguay that broke Steve Keshi's unbeaten. And not only that, now, even going to the World Cup in 2014, you will discover that under Steve Keshi, Nigeria qualified for the round of 16, despite the fact that they had a tough group, in which a group alongside Argentina, Bosnia, and even Iran. Well, I would say that Iran are the only underdog in that group. Otherwise, Argentina and Bosnia, they are not easy side. And not only that, they didn't eliminate in the group stage in the 2014 because they progressed to the knockout. And unlucky for them, they were defeated by France, in which they defeated Nigeria 2-0, with Pogba scoring a goal. And also Joseph Yobo of the Super Eagles scored an own goal. That was how France crushed Nigeria as for the 2014 World Cup. And you will discover that ever since the year 2014 to date, ever since the year 2014, that Steve Keshi led the Super Eagles team to the World Cup, Nigeria have not qualified from the group stage of the World Cup. Sometimes they don't even qualify during the playoff. So you will discover that the last time the Super Eagles played the knockout in the World Cup was under Steve Keshi in the year 2013. So Steve Keshi's Super Eagles team is one of the best Super Eagles teams that Nigeria have had for nearly 20 to 25 years. Thereabout, if I'm not mistaken. But so many persons are not seeing it. Steve Keshi's effort is being underrated. Nobody's talking about it. But if you can trace back very well, if you can trace back and do the accurate analysis, look at the momentum, the energy that Super Eagles had under Steve Keshi. If you look at the breakdown calmly and gently, you will see it and be convinced beyond every reasonable doubt that the best Super Eagles team that Nigeria have had for over 20 to 25 years was Steve Keshi's Super Eagles team. Yeah, so that's it. For all video, you can also catch this in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.